So, when people talk about self care, what exactly does that mean and why is it important?
I could literally talk for 3 hours about self-care. And I think I have because I keep giving presentations on it because it's so important. Self-care, a lot of times when people think about self-care, they think about getting their hair done or getting their nails done or going to the spa, all these things that cost money and that some people can't do. Self-care is not just that. Self-care is anything that brings joy to your life in a healthy way that you can do on a daily basis. If you don't care for yourself, you can't care for anyone else. I like to give an example where if you're in a race and you're barely making it, and you're not taking any stops and you're not drinking water, you just keep going, and they see somebody limping along and you try to take their weight on and help them carry it across the finish line, how are you going to do that? If you haven't fueled yourself and rested yourself and taken care of yourself, how can you help anyone else? So it's so important that you take care of yourself. Self-care can look different for different people. Like for me, personally, when I'm leaving work at the end of the day, and if I've been really stressed out, I'm going to turn on some music and take the long way home. Turn off my Life 360 so my kids can't see where I am. Because if they see that I'm supposed to be home and they're like, why are you not home? Where are you? Why are you at Target? So I'll just turn off my tracking so I can go somewhere and listen to some music in my car for a while or sit in the driveway and just have some peace before I have to go in, to my second job, which is, being a mom. Self-care is also just filling yourself with things like adult coloring books. I know it sounds so simple, but at behavioral health, you would not believe how many people enjoy coloring. And I remember when we first got our new administrator several years ago, he was said, there are adults back there coloring? Like, why are they coloring? It's like, well, have you done it in a while? It's actually pretty enjoyable. And then it lets your brain just kind of not focus on things that are stressful. You just focus on the picture, you practice mindfulness, and you're in the moment. And it's actually really enjoyable. Taking baths, walking around your block, playing with your cat or your dog, anything. It doesn't have to cost money to take care of yourself.
Absolutely. I like what Sarah said about sometimes we think about things that cost money and like a trip or, going out to dinner. But, self-care, one practice that I personally do and I'll share with y'all is I wake up a little bit earlier. I'm not a morning person, but I have found that taking that time to start my day slowly sets me up for success. I piddle and do other things, and I'll talk about what I do here in a little bit in more detail, but that is one way that I take care of myself. And I notice when I don't do those things, my frustration tolerance is a lot lower, so I am more irritable, and that affects everyone that I interact with, from my coworkers to my family to my patients. So expanding our view of what self-care actually looks like, and it's going to change. Because life changes and our stress levels change. And so it won't always, waking up and starting my day slowly doesn't always help me feel the way that I like to feel. And so we got to be creative and think of what are other things, like Sarah was saying, listening to music, having that time. Driving is out in the country with my windows down while listening to music. That's one of my favorite things to do whenever I'm having a very stressful day. Sometimes taking a midday drive and coming back, it's like I hit that reset button. And I don't really think that we consider things like those small practices taking care of ourselves, but it really can be.
And sometimes those are the first things that go when we're under a tremendous amount of stress, because we're rushing from one place to the other and you don't think about your empty tank. And so before you know it, you're really struggling. And so it's just these tiny little things that you can do that make such a huge impact on your day. And one thing that I forgot to mention that I think is a huge part of self-care is learning how to say no. So many times people say yes and they take on too many things. Somebody asks you to do something, you're like, yeah. And then you're like, why did I do this? Because now you're stuck doing something that you really don't have time for when you're already neglecting yourself and now you're taking on more. Saying no is okay. And sometimes people aren't used to hearing you say no. And so when you first start saying it, it might cause some problems with your family or your friends. They're used to you saying yes, and they take advantage of that. And then when you start to say no, you might get some pushback, and that's okay, because eventually they'll learn that you're not just going to be there every time they say yes. They ask you to do something. It's kind of like a kid. If you see a kid throwing a fit in Walmart, like my kids, for instance, when they were little, you might see them throwing a fit, and because they wouldn't get what they wanted, that's okay. Everybody, I'm sorry, you're just going to have to deal with my kid throwing a fit for a minute, because if I give them what they want, next time we go, they're going to do the same thing. But if I tell them no and explain why, that will stop that behavior. And same thing with families. If you give in and do everything they want, then they'll expect that. But saying no, learning how to say no and sticking to saying no, that's self-care also.
That's great information. So, Dr. Tran, Tammy, do y'all have anything else to add to that, or y'all ready for us to move on?
What do you guys do for self-care?
No, I just want to support what Tanya and Sarah said about intentionally making time for us. When we have a lot going on, we can go on auto drive, and it's hard for us to see what's adding to our stress and kind of what's making us bogged down. So I think it's important for us to take a little time to, a time out to kind of think about, okay, this is what's adding onto my plate, and I need to, make time for myself and my friends, my family. So I think that's important.
I think that everyone says now, when we get back to a normal, I think we're probably at our new normal. I think it's going to be different than it was pre-pandemic, and so it's going to be even more important for us to carve out that time each day, whether it's first thing in the morning or the last thing in the day, just to make sure you have some time to decompress and think about the day and think about everything that's gone on and kind of gather a plan for the following day. So I think that's going to be more important now than ever before.